What's up ADHD crew? Today I'm going to talk all about RSD, or Rejection Sensitive Dysphoria. One of the most prominent but little known side effects of ADHD is something called RSD, and it's actually a classic sign that you could have it. In fact, I'd say it's a dead giveaway that you could have it if you have other symptoms as well. A lot of people like myself might have grown up feeling very overwhelmed. I might have had the belief that life is exceptionally difficult to deal with, more so than other people. The reality is that ADHD makes emotions hit you 10 times harder than the average person. Now this is in parallel with what's known as emotional dysregulation, which is another part of having ADHD. So what is rejection sensitive dysphoria anyway? Simply put, it's an intensely negative emotional reaction in response to the perception of a negative judgment by others. Inside the brain there's something called the limbic system, which controls the emotional regulation components such as the anterior cingulate cortex and the amygdala. In the ADHD brain, however, the anterior cingulate is usually around 3 to 5% smaller and is far less active, which results in a decreased ability to inhibit and control emotion. So this may explain why rejection-sensitive dysphoria would occur. And this can reveal itself in many different forms and in different social situations. It's all about perception, it's about the perceived judgment. So it doesn't have to be a direct rejection as such, it could actually be rather indirect and interpreted as such. And if you've grown up with ADHD, you've likely had a lot of criticism throughout your life, which is in fact compounded your self-esteem into even lower depths, which only exacerbates the issue that you have with emotional sensitivity. RSD is likely to make a person very sensitive to criticism, even if it's meant to be constructive criticism. That person can't really detach their emotions from the knowledge that it's meant to be for their own benefit. It doesn't really compute. So in a way, ADHD has kind of programmed you to expect the worst and to take things more literally and more seriously. In fact, it feels like a personal attack on who they are at their very core. In relation to this, it can cause you to feel more prone to feelings of intense embarrassment, guilt and shame than a person normally would. Are you particularly hard on yourself? RSD can leave you frequently disappointed, excessively agitated and overly idealistic. You might assume that people are doing things to make you feel bad on purpose. You might assume that they don't like you, and you might always assume the worst of people. As an example, this could be perhaps in a social situation where a person makes a comment that's slightly blunt, that's perceived to be a jab at you. So if you feel slighted by a person's comment, you can feel kind of rejected and irritated by that. It can just make you really blow things out of proportion. But RSD can also make you fearful in anticipation of rejection or what you think might happen from past experiences. This is called rumination, where you end up dwelling on things for hours on end, worrying excessively over things that could happen, even if they have a low chance of happening. Now, I've been doing this all my life, where I've been pacing around the room or revisiting painful memories at night when I'm trying to fall asleep, and I'll play over the memory over and over and over, and I'll cringe out loud, and I'll call myself out and cuss, and I'll just dwell on it. In another situation, you might feel intensely jealous of somebody else because you perceive that they've had a bit more acknowledgement than you have for something, and so you feel excluded, which makes you feel rejected. RSD can make you excessively fearful about living up to your own expectations, and if you've got ADHD, you're likely to have very high expectations for yourself because of societal expectations in return. And if you've been constantly failing to meet these expectations placed by society throughout your life of growing up, you're probably going to have this really high standard, and it's going to interfere with your logic and reasoning. RSD can make you want to please everyone and try to fulfill everybody's expectations, and you might be labelled as a people pleaser. And this can be very toxic to your life because you're always trying to chase perfection, and it can ruin you. These are things like intense fear of not being liked, which can lead to social anxiety and avoiding things because of that anxiety, intense fear of being rejected in the workplace or a social group, intense fear of being romantically rejected, so you actually avoid making a move on somebody you're interested in the first place out of fear. Fear of rejection is pretty darn strong with RSD. When I'm experiencing RSD, I often feel like it's my inner child who hasn't grown up screaming out in retaliation. But in reality, it's involuntary. You can't really control it. It's always going to be there in the back of your mind. But it's up to us to learn how to control it and to mediate our responses. But it's exceptionally difficult for adults with ADHD to do this and be like other adults, because there's so much pressure to do everything correctly. When you put ADHD into the mix, it just makes things a lot more stressful. According to Psychology Today, it's a new label that is only now starting to be researched in depth. Individuals who have this condition respond extremely negatively to the perception of being rejected. It goes far beyond the run-of-the-mill discomfort that most of us experience. It is not, as of yet, however, an official disorder listed in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Disorders DSM-5. So to finish off, if you've got severe issues with RSD, you might want to consider consulting a psychiatrist for perhaps medications that can help regulate your mood. But I would recommend that it's probably best to seek out cognitive behavioral therapy from a specialized ADHD psychotherapist. Learning coping mechanisms to manage our emotions is an essential part of being an adult with ADHD, and so we have to take little steps every day to try and overcome these issues that we face, because medication alone can't always fix the issue, and that's what I preach on this channel. So let me know in the comments below, what do you hate the most about RSD? What are some experiences that you've had that have really hurt you because of your emotions? I'd be interested to know. So thanks for watching, and give us a like if you enjoyed the content, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.